Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is note. Let's take a moment to look at some of the definitions or the ways that we use this verb. The first way you'll hear note used is to mean to notice or pay particular attention to something. We're going to see some examples of this later, but sometimes people will use this to sort of get your attention, encourage you to watch, or like the word is used in the definition here, to notice a particular way that something is being done. A second way the verb note gets used is to mean to remark upon something in order to draw someone's attention to it. Now, the second definition, as I thought about it, my mind immediately went to literature, to stories. And as a person writes a story, many times they include dialogue, right? So what certain characters are saying to one another. And sometimes you'll see a particular character noted, right? And then we might have that sort of description of what they said, what they are trying to get another character to notice. A third way the verb note gets used is to mean to record something in writing. And a fourth way you might hear note used is to mean to show or indicate. So with this fourth definition, we might think of sort of pointing out. That might be a good way to kind of help us connect to the definition. You should know that note is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of this verb, all you need to do is drop the E before you add ing to form noting. The past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made by just adding the letter D, since this verb already ends in an E. Now, our base verb, note, ends in a T sound. This means the ed ending is going to make an id sound, and I'm going to add an extra syllable as I say this past tense or participle form. It should sound like this: noted, noted. I hope you can hear that id sound as I say it. Now, you might be happy to know there are no additional phrasal verbs that we need to discuss today. So instead, we will practice making some example sentences with our verb note. And today, we're going to practice and discuss the imperative, and we'll also talk about the simple past tense. Let's start with the imperative. Many people might know this as a command. So here we are telling someone to do a particular action. And the imperative in English is rather unique. We do not have a stated subject, right? So many times as we practice, you're used to me beginning sentences with I or she, he, we, they, something of that nature, right? But we're not going to do that in the imperative. In the imperative, we can just begin the sentence with the base verb. And the reason for that is our subject is implied. Right? So if we're telling someone to do something, right, the subject is you, right? That could be you singular or you plural. So let's take a look at my first affirmative example here. It says, note how she greets everyone she encounters. Okay, so you can see my verb is right at the beginning of this sentence. We might think of this sentence as maybe something a boss, a manager is saying to a new employee. Maybe this boss or manager is encouraging the new employee to notice how certain other coworkers are behaving, how they're interacting with customers or clients. So it's kind of one of those things where somebody's encouraging you, pay attention, right? I want you to act in a similar way. Now, if you want to make a negative sentence in the imperative, you're going to begin with don't and then the base verb, or do not and then the base verb. You can see that in my example. Don't note the mistakes of others. Okay, so here's a negative imperative. And this would tie back to that fourth definition about showing or indicating, right? So again, could be a number of different situations, but maybe we're talking about some really minor, small mistakes, right? And it's not necessary. Maybe it's not polite to, there's something that's wrong. Now, sometimes students will tell me that making sentences in the imperative feels really impolite, like they're being rude. So I always like to tell students you can make things a bit more polite by adding the word please at the beginning or please at the end of a sentence, but you don't need it in both places. You can do that in the affirmative, you can do it in the negative, and if that makes you more comfortable, then by all means, use that word please. Okay. Now, you'll notice there are no yes or no questions in the imperative. Again, this is all about commands, telling someone to do or not do a particular action. Let's move on to the simple past tense. We use this verb tense to talk about actions that have been completed at a known point in the past. And the nice thing about making sentences here in the simple past tense is that our structure is going to stay the same no matter what our subject is. So in the affirmative, I'm going to start with my subject, and then I'm going to use the past tense form of my verb. So here it's that ed form because it's a regular verb. Let's look at an example. The teacher noted how much effort the students had put into their projects, right? So it might be another way to say the teacher noticed, right? And then maybe indicated, right? Shared. I can tell how hard and how much, how hard you're working and how much effort you're giving into this particular activity. Now let's talk about making negative simple past tense sentences. To do this, I start with my subject, I use did not, and then the base verb. Okay? You might also hear the contraction didn't, and then the base verb. So notice in the negative here, I'm not using the ed form. Let's take a look at another example. The health inspectors didn't note any violations at the restaurant. So this could mean they didn't notice, could mean they didn't write anything down in a formal report. all of those could connect here to that sentence. Finally, let's take a look at making a yes or no question in the simple past tense. To do this, I start with did, then I have my subject, and then the base verb. So again, no ed endings on my verbs with yes or no questions in the simple past tense. Let's take a look at the last example. Did you note her phone number or email? So here's a question that's probably tying back to, like, did you write down her phone number or her email address? Do we have a way to contact this person? Okay. Now let's take a moment to look at some words that are related to our verb note. And the first word we're going to discuss today is just the noun form of this word. So exact same spelling and the exact same pronunciation. As you can tell from what's on the screen here, there are many ways to use the noun note. One way is to refer to a brief record of facts, topics, or thoughts, things that have been written down. So an example of this might be, can you share your notes with me? And maybe this is something you do in your classes, or maybe even while you're watching these videos, you take notes, you write things down that you want to remember. Now, a second way the noun note gets used is to refer to a short, informal letter or written message. Okay? So many times when we think of letter, we think of a whole sheet of paper, something maybe a little longer, maybe it's multiple pages. Note, maybe you think of like on a small piece of paper, right? An example of that in a sentence might be, I left a note on your desk, right? So some sort of information, it's a written message. Now, a third way the noun note gets used is to refer to a short official document that certifies a particular thing. Most common example of this, a doctor's note. So you can see that in my example sentence here. You'll need a note from your doctor to return to work. Maybe somebody had an injury that made it unsafe for them to do a particular job. What we're asking now is that a doctor provide a short document that indicates this person is healthy or well enough to do this particular activity at work. Now, a fourth way the noun note gets used is to refer to a single tone of definite pitch that's made either by a musical instrument or by someone's voice. An example of this might be, listen to the final notes of this song, right? So if it's a piano, right, the kind of individual sounds, that's what we mean, single tone. Okay? A fifth way the noun note gets used is to refer to the components of either a fragrance or a flavor. Okay? And we're going to take a look at my example sentence here to help understand this. It says, are there citrus notes in this perfume? Okay, so perfume, something many people will wear, something that smells nice. Right? And so they're talking about kind of, you might think of like ingredients, the components. So is there like a lemon, an orange, a lime? That would be citrus. Okay. Another way to use the noun note is to refer to a particular quality or a tone that reflects or expresses someone's mood or their attitude. An example of this, there was a note of frustration in her voice. Right? So the way maybe her voice changed as she spoke indicated like, right? I'm frustrated with particular the way someone is acting or the way something is happening. Okay? Now I've got one more related word that I thought we should discuss. It's the adjective noteworthy. This means interesting, significant, or unusual. Here's my last example sentence. The presidential candidate has promoted several noteworthy falsehoods. And this is a sentence I've borrowed from a recent article talking about a particular person who's running for the office of president here in the United States. And this person, through their platforms on social media, has tried to bring attention to myths is a kind way, I'm afraid of saying it, but things that are not true, but really trying to promote them. And I think this writer was trying to indicate this is very significant. It's also very unusual for somebody who is seeking sort of our highest government position to be promoting things that are not true. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.